My name is Misty Massey. I am one of the editors of The Weird Wild West, and I was also honored to have a story of my own appear in the book. And today I'm going to read just a few pages from the beginning of that story, The Faery Wrangler. Meme pulled out the cards before Durango finished her evening tea. She let her own cup grow cold, paying all her attention to shuffling and laying out different spreads, commenting under her breath before shuffling the cards and doing it all over again. Durango lit the lanterns as the shadows of night filled the corners of their tiny home, and still Meme concentrated on her tarot cards. The old woman turned a card and laid it on the table with a sharp snick. "Ah, ma petite." She patted the chair next to her. "Come, sit." "I'm sorry, Meme. Tell me about it in the morning. There's work to be done." Durango was strapping her leather belt tightly around her waist. If she didn't get out on the hunt soon, she'd miss the clouds of fairies that always gathered around the glowstones on Reedy Creek. "This one, it spells your destiny," Meme said, her dark eyes clouded with worry. "Does it say my destiny will be to catch a dozen fairies tonight?" Rain the last 2 nights had put her behind on her agreement with Katie Holder, the woman who ran the general store in town and sold the fairies she trapped. "How about if I promise to gather a basket of honeysuckle for you just before dawn? It'll be sweet with the morning dew, just the way you like it." Durango reached up to the low rafter where her ashwood hoop and fairy cages hung. She dropped the hoop into her pack and tied the cages to her belt with a strip of cotton. "Where are the candles for my sparkle wheel?" The old woman shrugged her shoulders. "You leave your toys all which-a-ways, and I should know." "It's not a toy," Durango grumbled. Although Meme was right, it was a toy. It was a painted wheel as wide across as her open hand, with a dozen flat metal paddles affixed to the outer edge, and a square of tinder paper attached to the long metal rod it hung from. When a lit candle was placed below it, the wheel would spin, and the paddles rubbing against the tinder paper created silver sparks. It was the kind of thing town boys would buy to celebrate whatever war they were most proud of their ancestors winning. She'd spent good money on it some months back. Katie claimed she'd gotten it from a Chinese sorcerer, and that it would bring good luck. Durango wasn't sure about the luck, but it definitely attracted fairies when she lit it. Digging in her rucksack, she located the candles. 2 left. That would be enough for tonight. Her tiny lantern was on the hearth where she'd left it, but Meme stepped in front of her, waving a card in her face. "I beg you seat yourself and listen, ma belle, or do you want to have an argument be the last words between us?" Meme reached out and took Durango's brown hand in her own darker one. She always insisted that their parting words be loving and kind, in case they were the last they ever shared. Durango loved the old woman like she would her own grandmother. Meme had been the first to arrive the night Durango's parents were murdered, holding Durango's father in her arms while he breathed his last. She'd made him a promise to keep his child safe. She gave up a life of power and comfort in New Orleans in order to spirit the baby away from danger and into the frontier. In 16 years, she'd never once complained about it. The card lay face up on the table, waiting for her. Meme's tarot were hand-painted and featured symbols that were personal to Meme herself. This card displayed a long, delicate hand reaching out from the card, a purple stone ring encircling the middle finger, and the skin dark as night. Behind it ran a stream of bubbling water over an otherwise desolate wasteland. Meme stroked the card, then tapped it 3 times. "Someone, he offer you a choice. He likely don't let you know what you truly getting till the deed be done." "He? A man, Meme?" Durango rolled her eyes. "This card, it don't speak of romance, ma petite. It's a warning. Beware the man you meet. Accept nothing from him, not his hand, not his belongings." "I'm not afraid of a man, Meme." She patted the knife she always carried strapped to her leg. Meme pushed herself up from the table and walked to the pantry cupboard. Opening the door, she rummaged in its depths, emerging moments later with a small bag. "Take this." "What is it?" "Sea salt. I brought it with us from New Orleans. You feel a trap closing around you tonight, you pour this on the ground, and you'll be able to come home to me." "Pour perfectly good salt on the ground?" "Do as I say, ma petite." Meme had been a priestess and a practitioner of magic in New Orleans before the war, but she was cautious out here on the prairie. The war might be long over, but dark faces remained rare and suspect to the white settlers in town. Other than reading the cards, Meme never did anything that couldn't be explained. That didn't stop her from telling Durango all sorts of fantastical tales. Sometimes she spoke of the Loa, supernatural beings that granted their believers power. Other times it was the Fae, who lived under a mountain somewhere but took walks in the real world to entertain themselves with unwary humans. Meme had more warnings about the Fae than Durango could possibly remember. Not that she believed any of it. How would Salt be able to rescue her from any sort of trap? If she chose to argue the point, though, she'd be even later getting out onto the prairie, and there were fairies to trap. She smiled and took the bag, tucking it into her rucksack. "I'll be home around dawn, Meme. I'll take great caution around any gentleman I might meet tonight, and when I come home I'll have your honeysuckle with me." The old woman threw her arms around Durango, embracing her with an unusual strength. "See that you do." Durango hefted her sack onto her shoulder, lit the tiny lantern, and headed for the door. "Remember what I said," Meme called. Her voice was strangely shaky, as if she was holding back tears. Durango looked back and smiled. "I'll remember." So, if you enjoyed that and you think you'd like to read the rest of the story, please do get your hands on a copy of The Weird Wild West from eSpec Books, and I hope you like what happens next. Bye.